Hello, everyone. Welcome to addressing the OWASP top 10 APIs, the OWASP top 10 for APIs and LLMs, primarily focusing on those security risks. My name's Andrew. I am a customer engineer here at Google, specializing in Apigee and application integration. Just a quick note before we get started, if you have questions along the way, we'll be collecting them in the Q&A section of the Meet. You'll notice a little menu item. It looks like 9 dots down in the bottom right-hand side. You can post your questions there, and then we'll organize those questions and go through them at the end during the Q&A session. So starting us off today is going to be Megan Bruce. She is our outbound product manager for Apigee, specializing in advanced API security. And with that, take it away, Megan.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew. Really appreciate the intro. And thanks everyone for joining and for your time today. So we wanted to have this session because we actually had a similar session at Google Next this year that was booked out. So a lot of folks couldn't get in the room. And so we thought, okay, let's do a repeat of this, but let's also address roadmap as well. So this is a community session, which means we won't go into specific details around timing and some of the more specifics on our roadmap. So just to set that expectation up front, if you are an Apigee customer and you have an account team, absolutely reach out to them, and we can do a more detailed deep dive into roadmap. But for this session, my goal will be to both help you understand how we can help you address OWASP top 10 risks for LLMs and APIs, and also help you understand some of the new releases we've had for advanced API security, which is one of our core offerings for this, and kind of what's coming next. So that'll be my focus. And again, if you have any questions or comments or things you want to learn more about, please just use the Q&A for that, and I'll try to leave some time. I'll also try to not talk super quickly, so let me know if I'm talking too fast. Okay, so let's dive right in because we actually have a lot to cover. This slide is I think all of you on this call probably understand this already, but we'd like to just level set about, managing APIs is hard. They are designed and deployed differently. There are a lot of different protocols, gRPC being one of those, for example, here. Every API is a potential attack vector. And so we'll talk about, how do we help you make sure that you're keeping your APIs secure so that they aren't attack vectors, or you mitigate the risk rather. And then every API is built for different purposes. And, of course, we're starting to see a lot of customers have more and more APIs as they're starting to move AI applications into production. So we'll talk a little bit specifically about AI safety and security controls that we've released at Apigee recently. Apigee, if you're not already familiar with it, I'm assuming most of you are if you're on the call, but if you're not an Apigee customer today, Apigee is Google Cloud's API management platform. That being said, yes, we are part of Google Cloud, but Apigee supports all clouds, and we also have an on-premise offering as well. Apigee really supports all use cases, all protocols, and of course, this includes AI use cases as well. At any scale, we work with a lot of enterprise customers. We work with customers anywhere from large global banks down to small SMB customers and digital native customers. So we really support any customer, any scale. And then against any attack. So that's really what we'll be focusing on today is our security offering that is part of the Apigee platform. And then for any developer, as mentioned. So let's move on from that. If you want to learn more about Apigee more broadly, again, we're not going to go into many details about Apigee itself, but there are a lot of other community resources and roadmap sessions and things like that on Apigee more broadly if you're interested. But let's talk about security, since that's what we're here for today. So we think about security in multiple layers, as we know security teams do. So when we're talking about security today, we're going to address all 4 of these boxes. And we're going to start with Cloud Armor, the web application firewall. Now, I'm going to talk about Cloud Armor here because I'm part of Google Cloud, and we want to talk about what offering we have as part of GCP. But when I say web application firewall, this could be any web application firewall. So to have Apigee, you of course don't need to use Cloud Armor. You could use your WAF of choice, but Cloud Armor is Google Cloud's WAF. So we'll talk about how you have Cloud Armor. That's the first layer of defense that we think about here for DDoS protection, especially at the L3, L4 layer, the network level. And then Apigee platform security. So Apigee itself includes a lot of built-in security controls that already will help protect you against OWASP top 10 API threats. Advanced API security is an add-on to Apigee's platform. It can be enabled in a matter of minutes. Again, it's part of the platform, it's integrated. And we'll talk about specifically the capabilities that Advanced API Security provides on top of Apigee's already built-in security controls. And then finally, we'll touch on some of the AI safety and security controls that we've released in Apigee as well. So talking about Cloud Armor, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. If you are interested in learning more about Cloud Armor or WAFs in general, there are a lot of other, again, resources out there. But we're going to just kind of briefly set the stage here for why Cloud Armor works well with Apigee. So a lot of customers will ask us when we're talking about API security, I already have a web application firewall, so why do I need any sort of additional security protections? And that's because it doesn't solve all of the challenges of API security, but it does solve some of them, right? So Cloud Armor, or in a WAF in general here, is best and really well and excels at protecting against those L304 volumetric DDoS attacks, and same for volumetric layer 7 attacks as well. So when we think about using Cloud Armor, or again, any sort of web application firewall plus Apigee, we think about the differences in this way. And we frame it as better together because it really is. You need both. If you want to stay protected, if you want to keep your APIs protected, you really need both. So again, Cloud Armor here, you can see what it addresses best is L304 DDoS defense, injection attacks defense. It's great at that. Bot management, it includes reCAPTCHA. And then when we get to Apigee and Advanced API Security, and we get further down this list, the things that Cloud Armor itself is not going to address is going to be deep payload inspection, regional rate limiting instead of global, beyond global rate limiting, API security posture management. That's not going to be part of any WAF. Shadow API discovery, and we'll talk about our approach to that. And then the long-term analysis of environment-level API traffic patterns is going to be something that Apigee and Advanced API Security can help you with. So the point of this slide, again, is to say that if you're thinking you have a WAF in place and that is your API security protection strategy, we really encourage you to think about adding additional layers there, because that is not going to protect you against everything that you need to stay protected against in some of those OWASP threats. So let's explore this a little bit more. When we talk about Apigee's platform security, there's some capabilities that Apigee already includes. So these are kind of broadly categorized. Apigee's documentation includes a list of all of our built-in policies that address a lot of these things here on the screen. So we have threat protection policies, access controls supporting multiple different authorization and authentication methods, support for secure developer and application onboarding, governance, and we'll talk a little bit about API hubs specifically later, and then network security as well. And again, the WAF is really going to provide a lot of that additionally. API hub. So I mentioned that in terms of governance. So API hub is something that is now part of every Apigee customer. If you're using Apigee X and hybrid, you now have access to API hub automatically. And API hub, from a security perspective, is really critical in terms of being able to stop improper inventory management, which is one of those OWASP top 10 API risks. So you need to understand what your APIs are, what they're doing, who's responsible for those APIs, and have those all cataloged in a centralized place. And that's what API Hub really helps to solve. It also includes metadata, so you can store custom attributes there as well. So for example, we'll take a look at something that we can do in Advanced API Security to essentially provide security scores for your API proxies. Those security scores could be user-defined attributes that are also assigned here in API Hub. So it's a way to just kind of have a centralized way of looking across your API catalog and managing and governing all of your organization's APIs in one place. And let's talk a little bit. So I'm not going to talk too much about API Hub, but if there are any questions on that, we can address that at the end too. But what I really want to get to is Advanced API Security, so that we can talk about where we are today with this product and where we're going with it. So Advanced API Security, as I mentioned, it's an add-on to Apigee. The core capabilities that Advanced API Security can help you with are, sorry, just skip that slide. I'll just walk through some common use cases here and how Advanced API Security can help. So let's say you have a developer within your company who exposes an API key accidentally, and this gets onto the dark web, and somehow a bad actor gets access to this. So how could advanced API security help with this? Well, the way that advanced API security works is that our abuse detection capability has two different types of abuse detection. So we have heuristics-based rules and we have machine learning-based rules. And so what those rules can do, particularly the machine learning-based anomaly detection rule, is that we can detect changes in normal traffic patterns, even when those are coming from valid credentials. So in the case of a leaked API key, for example, if all of a sudden we start to see traffic coming from an abnormally large amount of traffic or a large request size, something that looks different from your normal traffic patterns, we can detect that in Advanced API Security's abuse detection feature and notify you, alert you, and help you take immediate action to block or flag that attack. So that kind of ability to look at traffic, look at abnormal traffic patterns, even from valid credentials, is something that Advanced API Security can do. Another use case here is within Apigee, there's concepts of a shared flow. And so what this means is you can essentially define policies for, how traffic gets to or leaves your target service. And those shared flows can govern multiple API proxies. So this is large scale governance of your APIs. And so let's say someone changes the configuration of a shared flow. Maybe they alter or remove a quota policy for some crazy reason. And this shared flow is used by many deployed API proxies. So these API proxies are, already deployed, they're out there, and all of a sudden this change is going to impact multiple proxies at runtime. So Advanced API Security can help there by dynamically checking your deployed proxies and shared flows and making sure that the security profile or the security posture that you've defined is what is being reflected there in those deployed proxies. And if it's not, we can throw an alert there and we can provide mitigation steps for how to solve for that. And we have an API for that as well, so that can actually even be integrated into your build process. And then final use case here, and then we'll get in a little bit more to specifics and roadmap, is let's say a developer has an API they developed for a test project, it's an exposed API, but they left the company and no one really knew about this API. It wasn't cataloged in API Hub, for example. So now no one knows that this API is out there. So that's an unmanaged, undiscovered, unmaintained API. There could be a CVE or a vulnerability that's introduced in that, and that could quickly become a security risk. So the way Advanced API Security can help with that is by supporting shadow API discovery. And the way we do this, since we own the underlying infrastructure, at least for Google Cloud, we can detect activity behind Google Cloud load balancers. So you don't need to deploy an agent or anything like that. We look at the activity on the load balancer, we report that to you as an observation, and then you can compare that to known APIs in API Hub and understand, okay, this looks like an unmanaged API. What do I do next? And we'll talk about some steps of what you could actually do with unmanaged APIs to bring them under management as well. So those are some of the core capabilities of Advanced API Security. And before we get a little bit more into those, I just wanted to pause and mention here a customer example. So BMW was on stage with us back in 2024 at Google Next, and they did a really great presentation. I think there's a video of it out there. Hopefully there is, and sorry, I don't have the link. But the way BMW thinks about security is the same way that I mentioned that we think about it. So customers think this way as well. And so BMW has, a setup where they have a web application firewall, and that's their first layer of defense. And you can see here what they see the value of that firewall is providing. Then in the middle there, they have their API policies that they've configured in Apigee. And then finally, they have Advanced API Security on top of that, which is analyzing all their traffic coming through Apigee and making sure that those, if there are any anomalies, that those are being surfaced and blocked or flagged. And then they give that feedback actually back to the web application firewall. So for example, if a suspicious IP is detected in Advanced API Security, they then go to the WAF layer and block that IP so that it never even gets to the Apigee proxies. So OWASP top 10 for API security. So this is the most recent list. If you're not familiar with OWASP, which you probably are since you joined this call, but it stands for Open Worldwide Application Security Project. It's a well-known community standards for different types of risks, including application risks, APIs, LLMs, and they publish these top 10 lists somewhat frequently. I don't know what their cadence is actually, but the most recent one here was 2023. So you can see here on the left, these are the top API security threats that they've identified, broadly categorized here into the categories on the right. So authorization flaws, unrestricted resource consumption, security misconfigurations, and unsafe consumption of APIs. So we'll kind of talk about how our capabilities in Apigee and Advanced API Security map to this. But this is, they published this, it's public information. You can go to their site and read more about these. I'll also give you a QR code link to a white paper that we published that'll go into detail specifically about how Apigee and Advanced API Security can help you address each of these threats, like what policies you should put in place specifically to address them. So that white paper is going to be helpful. We co-authored that with Mandiant. So Mandiant's a part of Google Cloud. We work with them quite frequently. They helped us create this white paper and go into detail about, how you should be thinking about these threats at a general level as well. So it's really good research and information there from Mandiant. So Apigee Advanced API Security, as I mentioned, the kind of use cases here are mapped in these boxes. So we have shadow API detection and discovery. So I'll talk about that first. Then we'll talk more detail about security misconfigurations, how we can help you, create an API security posture and then evaluate your proxies against that. We'll talk about detection and how abuse detection works in more detail, and then how to take action on API attacks. So we want to help you find these attacks, but also immediately, of course, take action on them. And so we'll talk about the capabilities we provide for that and some of the where we're going with that next. And you can see just broadly here how they all map to OWASP top 10 threats. The security misconfiguration, the reason why there's so many of those level there is it sort of depends on how you configure your security profiles. So we'll take a look at that. You can protect against all of these things depending on the configuration of your security profiles. So discovery and cataloging of shadow APIs. I'm going to tell you where we are today, and then I'm going to tell you where we're going to be very soon, and we're very excited about it. So with shadow APIs, the key here, that the way that we do this is that we look at activity behind the Google Cloud Load Balancer. So we're looking for observations of API activity behind those load balancers, and then we surface those observations to you. Right now, we do this in Apigee provision projects. That's definitely very limiting. So where we're going next with this is to expand this to all GCP projects so that you would be able to, attach other projects here, run observation jobs to look at activity behind load balancers in those projects on GCP, and then bring all of that data into API Hub. So if we take a look at the next slide, this is where we're heading next. And we're super excited about this because we think this is going to provide a lot of value. So you would be able to connect GCP projects and run these observation jobs, which again, will look for activity on load balancers. And then you can see here in this observations column here in the screenshot that we're reporting unknown operations. So those are things that are not cataloged in API Hub yet. And so it doesn't seem like you know about those yet. And you may want to investigate there. You may want to bring those under management. And you may actually want to create specs for those, for example, because a lot of customers are starting to use API Hub, not just for human governance, but also for agents. So if you attended Next or you've been paying attention to what Google's doing in terms of agent development, we did launch the Agent Development Kit, or ADK. And part of the ADK is a tool set for API Hub so that you can easily connect agents to APIs in API Hub. So we want to make sure that all of your information is available for those agents to use, but that you also are able to govern those APIs that agents may be using. And so that's why we need to provide a lot of governance controls in API Hub for you. And that is also why we want to make sure that if you have unknown APIs that you now want to make available to agents to use, that you can easily kind of create specs for those in API Hub. So at Next, we talked about something that we called Spec Boost. This is essentially being able to create or enhance API specs using AI, using Gemini to improve that and then make sure that that additional data is available for, again, humans and agents to reference. So that's part of our kind of plans here for Shadow APIs. And again, in terms of timing, we're actively working on this and hoping to release this in H2 and in the next couple of months specifically. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably schedule another session here as soon as we have Shadow APIs, some of these new capabilities out, because again, we're super excited to share more about how all this is going to work. So that's a little preview. Okay, so let's talk about abuse detection in advanced API security and where we are today and where we're going with this. We've actually been making a ton of improvements to this. Another thing we're really excited about. So abuse detection in advanced API security, if you're not familiar with this, I mentioned this earlier, but we use a combination of dynamic machine learning models and static heuristics-based rules. Heuristics-based, probably a better word there. So essentially what this means is we have a comprehensive set of bot detection rules. That's all in our documentation if you want to check that out. So I didn't list all of them here, but we have rules like OAuth abuser, 403 rejection errors, looks for payload size changes, that kind of thing. But we also have two machine learning based models. And so one of those is called anomaly detection. And we recently made a lot of updates to that I'm going to tell you about. The other thing that's included in abuse detection, so we have these rules, they help you detect potentially abusive traffic. We report a lot of information about those attacks, which I'll show you. And then you're able to also send that data out to a third-party SIEM tool as well for analysis. We provide incident insights as well. So this is a new feature we launched last year. It's powered by SecLM, which is Google's security, and it's an ML model that we engineered internally for security. And so within each sort of detection, we provide an overview or a summary of what happened, and then potential mitigation steps that we suggest there too. Just again, to make triage easier. It's hard to know what to do next, and we're trying to help solve that challenge. And then finally, integration with security actions. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's essentially, okay, now I found something that's suspicious, what do I do next? So in terms of improvements that we are making to abuse detection, we've done a lot of things here, and I'm going to talk through each one of these in detail. So the first thing is that we've made some new information. We're providing more information to make triage better and more effective. So that'll be the IP address drill down and raw data features, which I'll show you. Anomaly detection machine learning model. So we've made a lot of improvements here that I'm going to talk through as well. IP config resolution support. So a lot of the challenges that we see today with customers is that they see false positives in their, this is a challenge I think with all tools in the security side, but there are false positives that are reported, IP addresses that are known good, for example. So we have some capabilities in place now and things that we're releasing very soon to make it easier to identify false positives and mark them so that they don't show up as things you need to pay attention to. You can create these detection exclusion lists, exclude those IPs so that they don't show up in abuse detection results. And then finally, anomaly explanations. So our goal is to make it easier for you to understand what happened, again, and take action as quickly as possible. So a lot of the improvements we're making are related to that. So let's take each one of these and we'll just walk through these quickly. So IP address drill down and raw data features. These are features we've released to make it easier to understand what happened. So if you see an IP address that's detected in advanced API security, you can get a lot of information about that IP address, including API products associated with that, which is an Apigee concept, countries or regions where that IP address is coming from, any developer apps it's associated with, proxies, so a lot of information here. That's kind of that first screenshot. And then raw data is something that we released in the past, actually the past month or so. So the raw data feature here actually gives you sample raw data. And so the thing that is really interesting here, you can see in this screenshot that it provides the user agent, device category, a lot of that information. It also provides things like the request verb. So for example, if you drill down into an IP address to try to understand, okay, what is happening here? What is this attacker trying to do? Is this a valid attack? You can also see what were they actually trying to do? What was the verb in their API operation? So that kind of data just is really helpful in terms of understanding, is this a valid attack? How serious is this? Do I need to take action? The next thing that I want to talk about is the improvements that we've made to the advanced anomaly detection machine learning model. So we've updated the underlying algorithm. So if you're an existing advanced API security customer, there's no change for you. There's no UI change or anything like that. But what we've done is actually made the underlying algorithm better, even better than it was before. So the algorithm we are using now is Google engineered. And sorry, I spelled that wrong. I apologize. It's a Google engineered algorithm that is developed specifically for anomaly detection. So this is the same algorithm that is used by multiple services here internally at Google for anomaly detection. So we're using that model now. And we've seen improved results on that when we did testing, which is why we chose to move to that algorithm. We've also updated the way that the model works. So it's trained on your historical API traffic data. So essentially what it does is it looks at historical data, and then it creates a model of what your typical traffic patterns look like in an environment. And when it sees something that's different, whether that's a lot of traffic from a different country that's not normal for that environment, or larger request sizes than what's normal in that environment, it will flag that as an anomaly. It's retrained weekly, even hourly, for improved accuracy over time. So this continues to get better with the more data that it has, like any machine learning model. And the most important thing is that your training data is never shared. So this is your historical traffic data. It is your model is trained for environment. And so that data is never shared for training purposes with any other customer. Environment level client IP address resolution. So you could essentially think of this as the true source IP and being able to configure that. So by default within Apigee for both analytics and security, we look at the first public IP in the x404 header. And so what we allow you to do here in Advanced API Security is actually say, okay, but I want you to look at the private IPs instead. I want to configure this so that you don't, mistakenly attribute something to an IP that's actually not a bad IP. So a good example of this is that for customers that have a lot of internal traffic, sometimes that first public IP address is like a load balancer IP. And so what we end up doing there is attributing too much traffic to a load balancer IP and then flagging that as, potentially abusive IP. And so the change that we've introduced here is to make sure that you can configure this and you have control over which IP address we look at there in the x404 header. And the result of this is essentially for customers with, again, a lot of internal traffic to their backend services, to their target services. The result here is reduction in false positives. So this is one way to help make sure that you can reduce those. So we always start by advising customers to make sure this is configured correctly for them at the environment level, and that can help really reduce false positives. The other thing that we're doing here that we'll be launching actually later this summer is detection exclusion lists. So this is an example mock-up that's just showing what this will look like. But essentially, again, we want to help reduce false positives and give you control there. So with this, you'll be able to actually select an IP address or select multiple and say, hey, this is a known good IP. I don't need this to show up in results. And then you can manage those exclusion lists. You can edit them. You can remove the IPs if you need to. But again, we want to make sure that you only focus on the results here within abuse detection that are actually potentially valid attacks and not have a lot of noise here from known good IPs. Another thing that I mentioned too is anomaly explanations. So this again is all about improving triage, making it easier for you to interpret the results you're seeing here. So you can see this anomaly summary tab. So again, this is something that we're releasing later this summer. The anomaly summary tab here, this would actually give you information when we flag traffic as anomalous as to why we did that. So it will show, okay, here specifically you can see we flagged this because there was a spike in error rates. This is the exact sort of time frame and date where that happened. And it just gives you a lot more information. So it's not a black box when something is flagged. So again, our goal there is to really make it much easier to interpret what you're seeing here and take action. A couple of things I wanted to mention. So these things are available now in cloud monitoring. Sometimes we get these questions from customers like, hey, the results that you're showing or the data, the analytics in your security reports, for example, are, for a specific environment, and we really want to see like cross all of our environments, what kind of abuse is being detected or what our security posture across environments. And there's actually a really easy way to do this. So cloud monitoring, again, of course, part of Google Cloud, gives you the ability to create custom dashboards, and we have integrated with cloud monitoring so that we have built-in metrics. So you can see here in this screenshot, there's metrics for security incidents from advanced API security, and there's also security assessment results. So that's integrated with our risk assessment feature. So the things that you can do here in cloud monitoring, for example, are you could create a custom dashboard where you could monitor your security posture across all of your environments. So you can create that kind of dashboard. You could also get, monitoring of what types of incidents are being reported by which detection rules in advanced API security, and for which proxies. So those kinds of specific reporting needs and things like that are available through the cloud monitoring because we have these built-in metrics. These metrics are non-chargeable. So if you're looking at cloud monitoring's pricing, they have this concept of non-chargeable metrics, which these fall into. So you can create these without having to pay additional costs in cloud monitoring. It's just giving you the ability to have more control, more custom dashboards, more custom reporting there. Alerts. So cloud monitoring also includes alerting. We have out-of-the-box alerts here as well. So if you're using cloud monitoring alerting feature for advanced API security, you can take advantage of those out-of-the-box alerts that are already set up there. And you can configure those to fire through email, Slack, any other third-party tool that you want. And so that's also something we've made easy so that you, again, can get alerted right away if there is a change in a security score for one of your proxies, indicating that there could be a security misconfiguration, or if there is, let's say, a new anomaly that's detected by our machine learning model, you want to find out right away, you can configure an alert for that. Okay, so that's a little bit about abuse detection, what we're doing, and what's coming. I'm going to talk next about API security misconfigurations, what we're doing there, and what we've recently released. So we call this feature risk assessment is what it's called in advanced API security. Again, you can think about this as security posture management for your APIs. And so the risk assessment feature, the way this works is you can set up security profiles. You can set up multiple security profiles. Those profiles are integrated with policies in Apigee. So I mentioned there are 30+ policies built into Apigee already. So what you can do is essentially create custom security profiles with weights assigned to those different policies. So you can see here in this screenshot here on the right that I have assessments set up here in this Google default policy, which we give you out of the box, that essentially checks for authorization policies and it gives that weight major. So that would mean if there's no authorization policy present on this proxy, that's you could configure an alert so that any sort of major misconfigurations like that are alerted on immediately. You could also give something a minor or moderate weight. And again, in cloud monitoring and with alerting, you can set the thresholds there. So maybe it's less important to you to know right away if traffic management policies are in place, but it's extremely important to know that authorization policies are in place. You can set, again, alerts based on those thresholds so that you don't get an alert if there's a minor misconfiguration, but you get an alert immediately if there's a major one. So it gives you a little bit of control there around how you want to manage getting notified about misconfigurations. And again, you can set up multiple different security profiles and evaluate your proxies against those across your environments. We also provide recommendations. So I don't have a shot of that here, but when we say that something is wrong, so if something is assessed and we find that there is a security misconfiguration, we also provide steps to remediate that. And again, we have an API for these security scores. So you can do whatever you want to do with that API if you want to and include that in your CI/CD pipeline, and maybe make sure that things don't get promoted to production if there's a security misconfiguration. That's something that we of course advise you to do too. And a lot of customers are doing that today. So risk assessment, we've put a lot of investment in this too in the past year, and we're continuing to invest heavily here. So we released custom security profiles. As I mentioned, that gives you the ability to build security profiles and assign weights as you need to. So right now, those profiles are integrated with Apigee's security policies. So that makes it super easy if you're an Apigee customer to just have all those policies you're already familiar with and build your security posture based on those. Integrated monitoring conditions. So within risk assessment, it's there's just a really easy step to add monitoring conditions for any of the specific proxies. So let's say you really care about a set of 5 proxies and you want to make sure that you're closely monitoring any security misconfigurations on those proxies. You can create monitoring conditions really easily just through a click of a button for those proxies. And you can customize those thresholds about when you get alerted. Shared flow support. So I think this is something that comes up often, is whether we check shared flows as well. And we do. We look at both deployed proxies and shared flows because that's extremely important. As I mentioned, the shared flows govern multiple proxies. So if there's a misconfiguration there, that's going to have much broader impact. So that is included. And these checks, again, are dynamic. They're not static. So we are looking at deployed proxies and shared flows. And when we see something that's deployed out there and something's wrong, we alert you. And it's ongoing. It's dynamic checks. CI/CD integration, so I've mentioned that a few times, and then AI policy integration. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the new AI policies that we've released in Apigee, and something that we are doing as a fast follow here is making sure that that's part of our risk assessment feature too, so that you can set up, security profiles that are looking at AI security posture and taking into account those new security policies in Apigee. Okay, so monitoring conditions, I mentioned this, so this is just a closer look. So again, here you can see this tab within our risk assessment feature called monitoring conditions. This is again at an environment level. You can toggle between environments here. And I have this option to create a monitoring condition. And so for a specific profile, so let's say you have a profile set up for your general API assessment profile. Here you can decide how many of those proxies that you actually want to monitor, and then just easily create monitoring dashboards in Cloud Monitoring for those proxies. So you can see here, you can just do that easy click out. We generate that dashboard for you, and then you can click out to that. I see there are some questions, so I think probably Andrew is fielding those in the Q&A, and I'll make sure that we leave some time at the end to address those too.
Yeah, we're organizing them, so feel free to upvote any of them, and yeah, at the end we'll collect those together and address them basically once Megan's presentation is done.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. So taking action on API attacks. So this is our security actions feature. So again, we don't want to just detect things and make you deal with that. We want to give you the options to respond. And so security actions includes the ability to either deny or block traffic that is detected as suspicious through our abuse detection feature, or it gives you the ability to just flag that. And so flagging is something that customers will do frequently if maybe they just want to make sure that attacker can't actually get to the backend service, but they don't necessarily want the attacker to know yet that they're on to them because they want to continue investigating this before they totally block it. So we have that ability. It's called flagging in security actions, sorry. And the thing I wanted to show you is that when you're setting up a security action, again, you can see here, you have the option to allow, deny, or flag traffic. You also have the option here to select specific conditions. So this is not just blocking or flagging based on IP address. You can also do things like flag or block based on API key, user agent, region codes. If say you want to flag traffic from a specific country, you can do that. So it gives you more control here in terms of how to manage the traffic that's getting to your backend service when it's detected as, either it could be through because it's detected abusive, or you could even do this just for making sure that you're flagging any traffic that comes through your Apigee proxies from a certain geo. So that's something we launched last year. So definitely check that out if you haven't yet. And then the last thing I want to make sure we get to, and I want to leave some time for questions, is our AI security and safety policies. So within Apigee itself, we already have a lot of what we call AI gateway native controls. So for example, we have routing and failover support. That's part of Apigee already. We have the ability to have API products and monetize those. That includes APIs that are fronting LLMs. Our quota policies today can be used for token limiting. So there are a lot of capabilities already available in Apigee for AI use cases, because we see again, we see AI and Gen AI is just another API management use case. So we're building these capabilities right into Apigee. But let's talk a little bit about specifically what we've launched recently. So LLM risks from OWASP. There's a list of 10 of those, but I want to focus on the ones that we can directly address today through some of the capabilities that we've included. So prompt injection, sensitive information disclosure, improper output handling, system prompt leakage, and unbounded consumption. These are all part of the latest list of LLM risks from OWASP that we can help address. And so taking a look at what we've launched recently. So we announced this at Next, and then just this month, these moved into public preview. So the first here is model armor policies. So we now have the ability to, within Apigee, to include service callouts in the pre-flow or post-flow to model armor. And so essentially this makes sure that you can do prompt and response sanitization scalably. And it also makes sure that you have full transactions of how those, everything that's going out to model armor and not hitting your backend service, that's all traceable in Apigee through our debugger. And we actually have a demo of how that works. So we'll show that next. And semantic caching is another policy that we've launched recently that's now in public preview. So Apigee's always supported caching policies. This is specifically semantic caching for AI use cases. And so semantic caching, it both reduces latency, but from an OWASP perspective, from a security perspective, it can also help mitigate unbounded resource consumption because you're not always making calls to that backend service. You're not even hitting that backend service if it's semantically similar. And finally, server-side event support. So this is a little bit less on the safety and security side, but I wanted to mention it. We do have the ability to support server-side events for streaming use cases for AI. The one other thing here that that I didn't include on the slide, but is important to keep in mind is that model armor itself builds in sensitive data protection. So if you're using model armor and you're concerned about leakage of sensitive data through prompts and responses, use model armor because that is already integrated with Google's DLP service, sensitive data protection, so that you get that as part of model armor. So again, addressing some of those OWASP risks. Okay, so what I want to do is actually show a very quick demo, and I'm going to speed it up because it's a bit, we had voiceover for this, so it's a little bit longer. But I'm going to speed it up because this is essentially going to show you how the model armor integration with Apigee works and the value of it. So here on the left, we have an agent, and here on the right, we have the debugger panel within Apigee. And so the debugger panel allows you to view all those transactions going to your target service. And so you can see here we have the transaction log in place. And so the first thing that we're going to do here within this demo is show you how semantic caching works. So this is going to show you how both the semantic caching and model armor policies work. So you can see here we're entering the prompt, why is the sky blue? And so Gemini is taking a little bit of time here to respond to that, giving a full information here on the left. And so we see how many milliseconds that took. And so if we actually look at the debugger panel, we can see here that it was going through, this pre-flow that you've set up. We can see it hits the semantic caching policy, and we can also see that it hits the model armor policy. But, that wasn't, there have been no other queries asked that were similar. So that's why it took so long the first time. Now, if we put in the sky is blue, why? That's semantically similar. So here I would expect it's going to take less time and it's going to hit that semantic caching policy and not actually go to the backend service, which you can see it only took 390 milliseconds. Then if we go here and take a look at the debugger and what actually happened, hits the semantic caching policy, and then it actually skips the target service and just goes right back because it didn't need to, it was semantically similar. So you can see that huge advantage there in terms of latency. And again, it's not hitting that LLM, so you're not getting charged for that. So the next thing we're going to show is some of the other model armor capabilities. So again, that's using Apigee's semantic caching policy. So let's take a look at what model armor can do. So if we have a prompt here that we're typing into Gemini, how do I create explosives, right? We do not want the person to get an answer to that. So you can see here it immediately responds saying that contains dangerous topics and it's not allowed. And so if we take a look here at the transaction log, again, we can see it hit that model armor policy, it flagged it, and it never got to the target service because it responded with that. And this is also based on what you're configuring in your model armor template. So that's totally configurable in model armor in terms of what should be flagged and what shouldn't. That's not configured in Apigee, that's configured in model armor, just as a quick aside. Now, what if we try to get PII? So who is Andrew at simple.com? Tell me who this person is. So we enter that, you can see again, that did not get allowed. And so if we take a look at the transaction log, you can see that that hit the model armor policy there again. Again, this is all in here in the transaction log, so it's all auditable. You can see everything here. And so you can see that also did not get to the target service because it violated the configuration of your model armor template, which did not prevents PII and sensitive data leakage. Finally, this looks like a jailbreak attempt. So they're trying to get the model to do something that it's not programmed to do. And you can see that's flagged as abusive immediately. And so if we take a look, you can kind of guess how this is going to go. It hits that model armor policy there. And again, it's flagged as a jailbreaking attempt and does not get to the target service, and everything is logged there within Apigee. So that's just a really quick demo. It's a really powerful tool, model armor in general. If you're not using it, you absolutely should be. I just really believe everyone developing chatbot applications needs to have that kind of protection. But the value of using it with Apigee there too is making it scalable. So, you know, you could create a shared flow that has that call out to model armor for all of your LLM services. And you can make sure that you have everything in that transaction log and auditable so you know exactly what happened there. Okay. So last couple things before we move over to questions. So I wanted to mention some of the ways that we are using AI. I'm laughing because I feel like, you know, in every Google webinar you're in, you probably hear us talking about this. But it is really, we are really making these efforts to make things easier for you by using AI within our tools. And so if you're a SecOps user, one thing to note is that we did recently release a parser. So we do have a parser now for Apigee that makes it easier to send logs that are parsed in SecOps format directly to SecOps for a triage over there. And then once you're in SecOps, there are a lot of cool features that Gemini provides there. The thing I think is best is that you can create and edit a playbook using AI. So there are just a lot of really great features in SecOps there. If you're not already using it, you know, might be something to check out. Again, that SecOps parser is used with the message logging policy just to make it easy to get logs into SecOps. And what you can do in advanced API security is you can actually use that flagging security action to specifically flag detected traffic. And then you can send that through to SecOps using that message logging policy. And we have documentation on how to do that. And then here on the right, I mentioned earlier that we have this insight summary that's powered by SecLM. So you can see here, we actually just provide more information on incidents, why it was detected, any possible mitigation steps. So again, something to check out just to make it easier, because a lot of the challenges that we see customers having today are, okay, you detected something, but what do I do? How do I learn more about this? What do I do with it? And so we're trying to help make that easier through some of these features. And then in terms of roadmap themes, so I touched on a lot of these already, but these are things that we're really investing heavily in. Now, again, if you're an Apigee customer and you want to hear more details about any of these things, please reach out to your account team. We can schedule roadmap sessions. It'll probably be me on that, and I can give you a lot more details. But in this forum, in the community forum, I can tell you that these are the sort of broad areas we're focused on. So Shadow API discovery, I showed you a little bit about what we're doing to expand to all GCP projects and make sure we can help you not only discover those APIs, but also manage them in API Hub centrally and even create specs for them so that you can make them usable by other developers within your organization, as well as agents. Abuse detection. So we are making a lot of effort here in terms of improving this capability, making it even better for you. We launched a new algorithm for anomaly detection that's really powerful, and we're working on making it the data cleaner and easier to use and giving you information on what to do with it. Security integrations, this is going to be a big focus for us. So we know that it's really critical to get your security teams this data and to work and collaborate with your security teams. So we have the SecOps parser. There are a lot of other things we're thinking through here in terms of integrating with both other Google security tooling and third-party security tooling. And again, we can give you more details in a follow-up session on that. And then AI agent and LLM security, obviously this is a huge area of focus for Google Cloud more broadly. And it's also a really big area of focus for us. So you saw the model armor and semantic caching policies. There's going to be a lot more capabilities that we'll be focusing on in 2025 to help you keep your APIs secure and your agents and make sure that your agents have access to managed and secure APIs. So those are our broad roadmap themes. I just wanted to mention to try advanced API security if you're not currently a customer. We do support trying it for free. So this is just straight from the pricing page, a public website. You can see you can start an evaluation org here for advanced API security. You can pay as you go. You can have a subscription. We have different options there. So just ways to get started today if you wanted to try it out. We also have some cloud skills boost. I think we're actually working on a lab for advanced API security. We don't have that yet, but you can try out Apigee that way too. And then I mentioned OWASP. I mentioned our white paper. So I went into some detail, not a lot, about how we address each of these threats. We do have this white paper. I will tell you it's a bit long. But of course, we have AI for that. But what you will get with this white paper is a specific overview of each of these security threats. Again, we partnered with Mandiant on this, so they provided a lot of information about these security threats and general tips for mitigating them. And then we provided specific details on what you should implement both in Apigee and advanced API security to stay protected against those threats. So to give you a lot of detail and kind of break that down for each one of these threats here on the left, and that QR code, it's available free, it's ungated, it's on our website. That just takes you to a blog post that summarizes it. But again, the white paper is ungated and free. Okay, so we have about a little less than 10 minutes. So I'd love to turn it over to Andrew to facilitate the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. That was awesome. But I was going to start answering a couple of questions just to give you a quick, take a breath, get a drink. So first of all, a couple questions on, will the recording be available later? Absolutely, yes. It will be posted on the community. It will be sent, the link to it will be sent out in the follow-up email. So yes, this session is available for you for future use. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as answered. Next one, I think this was already covered, but just to kind of reemphasize, is advanced API security part of Apigee X license, or is it an additional add-on? It is an additional add-on. Megan just went through that. You can add it on to whichever entitlement style that you have, and of course you can try it out with an eval license as well. Let's see, the next one. This one is a little bit more detail on the integration with actions. So Megan did go through this, so it was specifically about basically what can you log in terms of security events. Do you support forwarding to, it doesn't explicitly say SIEM tools, but I think that's what they're getting at. Yes, absolutely. So the flagging mechanism occurs, if you're familiar with an Apigee flow, you'll know what I mean by this. Basically, there's an action evaluation right before the pre-proxy flow hook, and that will determine whether it needs to block or inject the headers. The headers are customizable, but then you can use those headers as part of the transactional flow to then control, to say, let's say it was flagged as suspicious traffic, and here was the various rules that it was flagged for. You can then use that to say, okay, since it was flagged, maybe I want to honeypot it, maybe I want to do some other things, but if nothing else, I want to send it then in my logging to have that actually push it over to my SIEM system. Whether that's SecOps, whether it's Splunk, it doesn't really matter from that aspect. It'll work with all the different SIEMs there. That's the part that Megan mentioned. There is documentation under the Apigee documentation on exactly how to do that. Basically what your message logger policy should look like to be able to send those over to your SIEM system. Okay, let's see. You started to mention this. Elias asked if there will be a code in Code Lab or skills boost training to get a better understanding. I think the short answer is kind of. Yeah. The reason I say that there are skill labs specifically for Apigee and various, I think Model Armor's even in there as well. But for advanced API security, I don't believe there's one yet. I'm not sure, Megan, if you know if one's being worked on right now.
There's not one yet, and the challenge we're having, and perhaps it's sharing too much, but I just want to be transparent about why we don't have one. It's because we need to figure out a way that you could reasonably try out the abuse detection feature in a skills boost environment, which would mean that we'd need to basically have traffic that looks like it's attacking APIs in that environment. So we're trying to figure out that piece of it, and once we do, we can get a lab available there.
All right, and then it looks like the last question, it's kind of a multi-part here. How are AI bots blocked in Apigee to prevent scraping and or learning purposes? Can we personalize with some rules? I'll stop with that. I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, so personalizing, so we have a, let me find our documentation really fast, because in advanced API security, I mentioned we have a set of heuristics-based rules, and one of those is for bot detection. So we look for that as part of our abuse detection feature. Now, what we've been considering doing in the future, and this, I'm glad you brought this up. Today, we don't support personalizing those or adjusting the thresholds, for example. That is something that we're thinking about exposing in the future, so that you could, you know, for example, select which rules maybe you want to turn on, or adjust the thresholds or the sensitivity of those rules. So that's something we're looking at, but we don't support yet. And let me find the documentation on our rules really quickly for you too.
Okay. And then that did have a second part, but I think we kind of answered this because it asked about OWASP top 10 for LLMs. This was posted before you got to that portion of the presentation. Basically, is Apigee prepared for that, or does it need help from other services such as Cloud Armor, Model Armor, firewall rules? And I think we hit that topic. If not, feel free to re-add a clarifying question to the Q&A.
Yeah, it's essentially, it's a combo, because semantic caching, for example, is part of Apigee. That's a rule that helps against unbounded resource consumption for LLMs, and that's one of the top 10 risks. But it's also through combination with Model Armor. So we have that integration with Apigee. You do need to be a Model Armor customer, so there is that. You need to pay for Model Armor as well. But you know, that using both of those services, Apigee and Model Armor together, would give you the most protection.
Awesome. Well, that wraps it up for the questions that are currently in the Q&A section. If anybody has any else, you know, feel free to add them. But I'll hand it back to Megan for any additional wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I just I think for folks in the community, you know, we've realized that we need to really post more articles, get more information out to you about how to use advanced API security. So please stay tuned. We hope to do more of these. We hope to publish more knowledge-based articles just to help you understand the tool. And definitely we'll be posting when we release some of these capabilities. So for example, some of the things I showed are not available yet. I mentioned Shadow API integration with API Hub. That's coming in H2. So as soon as we have that available, we do want to do a follow-up session to just kind of show you what that looks like and how you can use it. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And as we mentioned, the recording will be available, so you can check that out too. Great. Thanks so much. Oh, sorry, I totally forgot. Yeah, Alex, our community manager, is going to be mad at me. So what's next? These are other resources. So there is an Apigee forum. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with that, but it's a really great forum. We have people that monitor that, respond to things. We post a lot of content there. So please check that out if you have questions about Apigee. And feel free to post and we will answer you. And then this was one of our community events, but events are posted there too. And yeah, if you want to learn more, please reach out to your account team, use this QR link. If you are not yet an Apigee customer, please get in touch. We'd love to talk to you. This does take you to a link to contact our sales team, just being transparent. We also have pay-go options if you want to get started without necessarily talking to a salesperson yet. That's also, of course, an option. So yeah, we hope that you'll check out Advanced API Security and Apigee if you haven't already. And please let us know if you have any questions. Feel free to post on the forum too if you have any follow-up questions for us. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.